Therapy made me quit two jobs which I genuinely believed were my dream jobs at the time. And I couldn't be happier about this, since I was able to see how much I've progressed personally and professionally, but most importantly, how much I progressed working on my mental health. And in this video, I'm going to be explaining everything surrounding why I quit those jobs and what happened when I was working on my mental health with my therapist and through the therapeutic process. Now, the first job that I genuinely thought was my dream job was when I was a regional operations director for a food delivery company. I was in charge of 8 countries and 100 plus million euros of P&L. And I had it all planned. Within 2 years in this job, I was going to get promoted and move to the global headquarters, where I would slowly go and become global head of operations and pretty much a COO of the company. So that was my plan. I was at that point a superstar in the company. Then the fateful day happened when I went to therapy and I needed to go to therapy. And through this therapeutic process, I slowly started to understand what I was doing, what my traumas were, and what my biggest fears were as well. And at that point, I was also working 12 plus hours a day. So I was slowly burning myself out and legitimately slowly digging my early grave. And so around 4 months in therapeutic process, I got a new boss. That boss was a Nepo baby, pretty much. And he was promoted, as I said, due to him being related pretty much to one of the top guys in the company. He was completely incapable of leading in anything, and 80% of us quit after the first 6 months. He was also fired, not shortly afterwards. But what him being put in to the position as my boss pretty much meant that I was not going to have a good time. And through me going through therapy, I understood that he was actually playing my dad, what my dad was like in the past. And I was going through hell on earth at that time when he was pretty much reigniting the trauma and, yes, abusing me in that workplace. Now, if it were before my therapy, I would just be trying to work harder, work instead of 12 hours a day, 16 hours probably a day, and just trying to push it through and just letting it happen. Well, in this case, I didn't. I finally figured out that, hey, I don't want that life, this kind of life. I don't want to work 12 plus hours a day for a company that doesn't even give a shit about me, specifically this person and everybody else that was protecting him as well, since I did voice my opposition to it. And finally, what kind of made my damn break pretty was that I just couldn't handle it anymore. And the energy that I was using for my mental health and for everything around it was just too much. So I decided that I was going to go on sick leave. And on sick leave, and we can also call it burnout as well, I had both, was that I was only focusing on myself and on my mental health, reassessing what the hell am I even doing here? So at that point, I decided that I was never going to come back to this company, that I was going to get a different job and or work for myself. So the funny part about that one was that while I was on sick leave, when I decided this, another thing happened was that I was offered a job a week later. And of course, I quit my this current job and I became a chief of staff for the CEO for a career coaching company. Now, again, this was at that moment legitimately everything that I asked for. And this was my dream job. I was the person that was going to be working directly, of course, with the CEO, and based on how much the company grew and my accomplishments, I was pretty much slated to become a COO within 2 years. Again, COO, clear progression, freaking amazing. I was super happy. And we're working together. Everything was amazing for the first 6 months. Then for the last 6 months, not so much. Now, I was talking with my therapist, of course, at that time on a weekly basis. And what started out as a equal relationship. So CEO, me as the chief of staff, we were almost in the same mental health state, professionally and personally. Our visions were completely aligned. Well, after 6 months, me going through therapy, me actually working on myself, my personal self, not just my professional self, I actually surpassed and progressed past my CEO. So the CEO was going through coaching and everything else, but he was only going through it in terms of improving his company and pretty much everything else around it. And he was working from morning till nighttime pretty much every single day. And I got like a couple of calls from him at 11 p.m., which in the following 6 months, I pretty much forbade him doing that because I still had a life and he didn't. And since he was saying, hey, my company is my baby, now that is a red flag for me. I don't want to work with people like that. But at that point, I was like, hey, it's perfectly normal. Well, and that subtle change that happened within 6 months was just first my intuition. Something does not feel right. He's not discussing stuff with me as much as he did before. And I'm almost 100% certain that he also didn't understand this consciously, just did this subconsciously because he was afraid. And when we're afraid, when we have this fear of something happening to us, we go into the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. Since it was his company, he pretty much, of course, chose to fight. Or flight, in this case, kind of like made, isolating me from everybody else. Now, the one interesting dynamic, usually, if you look at a chief of staff position, I wasn't in charge of anybody. I wasn't a manager to. I was an individual contributor, but pretty much people were still reporting to me because the CEO, he told me straight up, like, I'm not a person that likes to lead. Lash, you lead, stuff like that. So what ended up happening was for every single problems that people had, they came to me. Didn't matter who they were. I always had an open door policy or no open meeting policy since we were pretty much working online. Nobody went to him. So in the end, I actually had more information than he did. And also, I wasn't looking only through the lens of the company. I also was looking through the lens of the employee, their well-being, and everything else that came around it. And then, as I said initially, I felt the CEO that he was becoming a little bit uncomfortable with the positions that we were in. I was becoming more and more comfortable. He was becoming more and more uncomfortable. And specifically, you could see that we're just like, yeah, as I said, he didn't give me all the info. And then he, of course, found a person that was more like him. So, in terms of personalities and all of that stuff. And he slowly started to promote her. And I agreed with him 100%. The person, she was a great person to promote. Well, then the last 6 months was more of him being, I would say, almost afraid of me, and kind of like admitting that I was more capable than he was. Because his biggest fear in the end was that I was going to copy what he was doing and just be more successful, which I had no intention into ever going into that area of coaching. Um, so what ended up happening was that he slowly wanted to pretty much fire me. He couldn't at that time because in the end I just had like a little bit too much power and too much influence. But that and it was almost up to the day where I was at the company for 1 year, that we had that faithful meeting when he said, you have to be working for the company 100% and not doing anything else. I need 100% commitment of you, right? And this is what I rejected. So one of the things that he wanted me to do was to rearrange my LinkedIn profile to be pretty much selling for him, for his company. And that's where at the beginning I draw the line, and I also draw the line that I was not going to be working more than 8 hours a day, which in general I was never working apart from a few days. And that was kind of like the rift between us. What happened was that I said at that point that yes, I quit, and I quit effective immediately. Since I was a contractor, I wasn't an employee. And that was the way my dream job number two ended. That I quit, I set up my boundaries, and I took charge of my own destiny, of my own career, personal and professional, especially my mental health. Because that was the first time that I told somebody straight to their face, I'm done. I don't want to work with you anymore. I don't believe in you. I don't believe in the company. And I don't care what happens because I come first, not the company. And even though we had massive success, I also brought him a ton of success. This was how, pretty much in the end, it ended for us. Parting consensually in the end. Um, and what I learned from this was how much within that space of a year I progressed within my job number two, specifically what I wanted, that the titles that I was always chasing were actually because of my parents, because of my fear that I was not enough, that I was not, that I wanted to show how capable I was through, hey, I became head of country operations at first, then I was regional operations director, and I wanted to become the head of global operations, and here in my second job, chief of staff, and then a COO. That was just me trying to show everybody, hey, I am actually capable. But in the end, I wasn't true to myself who I was. So whatever I wanted, that situation, specifically with job number two, would have ended the same way. I was not going to be working there for more than 18 months, even if I acquiesced on everything that the CEO wanted me to do at that point. So completely reorganized my LinkedIn profile so that I would be promoting his company instead of myself. I was probably going to get fired within 6, probably after I did a couple of other projects that I had in my pipeline. But in the end, I took charge of my own destiny, of my own life, and I wasn't peddling to what others wanted me to do, only what I felt right for me. And this was a story how my two dream jobs, they weren't. And if you want to hear more about mental health and stuff, any questions, comments are below. Other than that, thanks for watching.